I can still hear the words echoing in the cold, sterile room. He's a useless soldier, Admiral, a coward, a disgrace to this family and to the uniform. My own father, standing there, his face a mask of contempt, spewing venom that felt colder than the steel bars that could have been my future. He said it at my military tribunal, not in a hushed whisper, but loud enough for everyone to hear, for the Admiral to hear, for me to hear and feel the full weight of his disappointment. Was I wrong for what I did, for saving lives in a way he couldn't comprehend? Tell me, after you hear everything, if you would have done the same. It all started long before that tribunal, of course. My entire life felt like a prelude to that moment. Growing up, my dad, General Mark Harrison, was a legend, decorated, fearless, a true patriot. He embodied everything the military stood for, and he expected nothing less from me, his only son. From the moment I could walk, my toys were miniature tanks and planes, my bedtime stories were tales of valor and heroism, and my future, according to him, was set in stone. West Point, then a distinguished career in the armed forces. I never really questioned it. It was just what we did, what I was supposed to do. I excelled at West Point, not just because I was smart, but because I had something to prove. To myself, yes, but mostly to him. I wanted to see that flicker of pride in his eyes, a genuine smile that wasn't reserved for Medal of Honor recipients. I graduated top of my class, chose the infantry, and quickly found myself deployed to a godforsaken patch of desert that the military, in its infinite wisdom, called Area of Operations Falcon. It was a dust bowl, a furnace by day, a freezer by night, and home to an enemy that seemed to materialize out of thin air. My squad was a mix of seasoned veterans and fresh-faced recruits, much like myself. There was Sergeant Miller, a grizzled old-timer who'd seen more action than most history books, and Private Jenkins, barely out of high school, still talking about his prom queen girlfriend. We were a tight unit, as tight as you can be when your lives depend on each other. We ate together, slept together figuratively, of course, and faced death together. Our mission was primarily reconnaissance and patrol, disrupting supply lines and gathering intel. It was grueling work, physically and mentally draining. Every shadow could be an enemy, every sound a prelude to an ambush. The adrenaline was a constant companion, a bitter taste in your mouth. I saw things out there, things that no one should ever have to see. The sheer brutality of war, the casual disregard for human life, the way people can be reduced to nothing more than statistics. It changes you, it changed me. One scorching afternoon, we were on patrol, making our way through a particularly desolate village that had been flagged as a potential insurgent hub. The silence was unnerving, thicker than usual. Even the omnipresent buzz of flies seemed absent. Suddenly, an explosion ripped through the air. Not from us, but from a small, dilapidated schoolhouse on the outskirts of the village. We were too far to have triggered it, but close enough to feel the ground shake beneath our boots. Without a second thought, Sergeant Miller barked orders, and we moved, fast and disciplined, towards the smoke plume. As we got closer, the horror unfolded. The schoolhouse was partially collapsed, dust and debris hanging heavy in the air. Cries high, pitched and desperate, pierced through the ringing in my ears. Children, they were still inside. We immediately began search and rescue, prioritizing the living. The scene was chaotic, heart-wrenching. Limbs protruding from rubble, dust, caked faces smeared with blood and tears. We pulled out what we could, frantically digging with our bare hands, ignoring the pain, the fear, everything but the urgent need to save those innocent lives. I remember pulling a little girl, no older than 5, from beneath a shattered beam. Her arm was twisted at an unnatural angle, but she was alive, her tiny body trembling against mine. Then the second explosion, this one closer, much closer. It wasn't the enemy. It was a secondary device, planted to target rescuers. The ground beneath me gave way, and I felt a searing pain rip through my side as shrapnel tore into my flesh. I was thrown backward, landing hard, the wind knocked out of me. Darkness encroached around the edges of my vision, but through it, I saw something that snapped me back to reality. A cluster of unexploded ordnance, partially buried, its timer ticking down. Right next to where Sergeant Miller and Private Jenkins were still digging, oblivious. Right next to where several injured children were being tended to. There was no time to shout a warning, no time to think, no time to debate. My training kicked in, but it was instinct, pure and raw, that guided my hands. I scrambled, ignoring the searing pain in my side, ignoring the dizzying effects of blood loss, and grabbed the nearest unexploded device. It was bigger than I expected, heavy and ominous in my trembling grip. I looked around, desperately searching for a safe place, somewhere to toss it where it wouldn't kill more people. There was none. Every direction was filled with my comrades, with children, with the injured, except one. A small, open sewer grate leading to an underground drainage system. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble. But it was the only asterisk shot. I didn't hesitate. I hurled the device with every ounce of strength I had left, a silent prayer on my lips. It clattered down the grate, and a fraction of a second later, a muffled boom echoed from beneath us. The ground still vibrated, but it was different, contained. A wave of relief, so potent it almost brought me to my knees, washed over me. I had done it, I had saved them, but the effort, combined with the shrapnel wound, was too much. The world dissolved into black. I woke up in a field hospital, the stench of antiseptic thick in the air. My side felt like it was on fire, a throbbing agony that made every breath a struggle. Sergeant Miller was there, his face grim, but with a surprising hint of respect. He told me what happened after I blacked out. The other device, the one I threw down the sewer, had been a cluster bomb. It would have wiped out everyone in a 10-meter radius. He said I was a hero. Private Jenkins, pale and shaken, called me a miracle worker. But all I could think about was the cost. My actions were reckless, unplanned, outside of protocol. I had acted on instinct, not procedure, and that, in the military, can be a very dangerous thing. Word got back to my father, not the hero part, not the miracle worker part. Just the part about me throwing an active explosive device, without direct orders, and getting injured in the process. He saw it as insubordination, a lapse in judgment, a deviation from the perfectly executed plan. He saw it as a weakness. I was flown back to a larger base for recovery, then sent home for further evaluation. That's when the tribunal began. My father, with his formidable reputation and connections, could have made it all go away. He could have painted me as a brave soldier making a second decision under extreme duress. But he didn't. He saw an opportunity to straighten me out, to teach me a lesson about following orders, about discipline, about what it meant to be a true soldier. He saw my actions as an embarrassment, a smudge on his pristine record. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. I was facing charges of insubordination, reckless endangerment, and conduct unbecoming an officer. My military career, the path I had been groomed for my entire life, was hanging by a thread. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have fought for your actions, even if it meant defying your father? Or would you have taken the easy way out and hoped for leniency? The tribunal was a kangaroo court, or at least it felt like one. My father's presence loomed large, his reputation casting a long shadow over the proceedings. He presented evidence of my recklessness, citing obscure regulations and protocols I had supposedly violated. He painted a picture of me as a rogue element, a soldier who couldn't be trusted to follow orders when the going got tough. He called me insubordinate, impulsive, and yes, a useless soldier. His words stung more than any physical wound. I tried to explain. I talked about the children, about the imminent threat, about the lack of any other option. But my words felt hollow in that room, overshadowed by my father's booming voice and his meticulously presented case. The officers on the panel, most of whom knew and respected my father, looked at me with a mixture of pity and disdain. They were ready to rule. Just as the Admiral, a stoic woman with piercing blue eyes, was about to deliver her verdict, Sergeant Miller stepped forward. He hadn't been called as a witness, and his sudden intervention caused a ripple of surprise. "Admiral," he said, his voice gravelly but firm, "with all due respect, the General is mistaken about Lieutenant Harrison's actions." My father scoffed. "Sergeant, you were there. You know he acted outside of protocol." "Indeed, sir," Miller replied, unwavering. "But sometimes protocol doesn't save lives. Sometimes instinct does. Lieutenant Harrison didn't just throw an explosive. He neutralized a cluster bomb that would have killed me, Private Jenkins, and at least a dozen innocent children. He did it knowing full well the risks, and he did it without a moment's hesitation." The Admiral's eyes flickered from Miller to me, then back to my father. "General Harrison," she said, her voice calm but authoritative, "you've made your case. But I'd like to hear from the lieutenant himself, without any further interruption." She looked at me directly. "Lieutenant Harrison, what do you have to say in your defense?" I took a deep breath. My voice was shaky at first, but as I spoke, a strange sense of calm settled over me. I recounted the events, not with apologies or excuses, but with a quiet conviction. I described the children's cries, the ticking timer, the impossible choice. I looked at my father, trying to convey the desperation of that moment, the raw, primal urge to protect. He just stared back, his face unreadable. Then the Admiral did something unexpected. She stood up and walked around the table, stopping directly in front of me. "Lieutenant," she said, her voice softer now, "you're injured. May I see your wounds?" I hesitated, unsure. My father had always taught me to hide weakness, to project an image of invincibility. But the Admiral's gaze was empathetic, not judgmental. Slowly, I lifted my shirt, exposing the thick bandage on my side. She gently pulled it back, revealing the raw, red scars where the shrapnel had entered and exited. They were still fresh, angry. She traced a finger lightly over the scarred skin. "These aren't the marks of a coward, General," she said, turning to my father, her voice now edged with steel. "These are the marks of a soldier who put the lives of others before his own. These are the marks of courage." My father's face, for the first time in my life, faltered. He looked at my wounds, truly looked at them, and for a fleeting moment I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen in years, a hint of concern, a flash of something akin to regret. The Admiral continued, her voice resonating through the silent room. "Lieutenant Harrison's actions, while unconventional, resulted in the preservation of life. He made a difficult decision under extreme duress, and he did so with courage and selflessness. His father may call him a useless soldier, but I see a leader, a man who understands that sometimes The greatest acts of bravery are not found in following every single rule, but in knowing when to break them to save lives. She turned to the panel. Case dismissed. Furthermore, Lieutenant Harrison will be awarded the Purple Heart for his injuries sustained in the line of duty, and the Silver Star for gallantry in action. General Harrison, I suggest you rethink your definition of a useless soldier. The room erupted in a low murmur. My father stood there, shocked. He didn't say a word. He just turned and walked out, his usual imposing stride replaced by a defeated shuffle. I didn't see him for weeks after that. The aftermath was complicated. I received my medals, a quiet ceremony attended by Sergeant Miller and a few other close comrades. My father sent a terse email of congratulations, devoid of any real warmth. Our relationship never fully recovered, but it did shift. He stopped trying to control my every move, stopped seeing me as an extension of himself. He saw me, finally, as my own person. I continued my military career, serving with distinction, but always with the knowledge that sometimes the true measure of a soldier isn't just in obedience, but in the courage to make the right choice, even if it's the hardest one. I learned that my worth wasn't defined by my father's approval, but by my own conscience and my own actions. It was a harsh lesson, taught in the crucible of war and in the sterile confines of a military tribunal. But it was a lesson I needed to learn. It taught me about true leadership, about empathy, and about the difference between duty and blind adherence. I'm proud of what I did, and I wouldn't change a thing, so that's my story. I hope it made you think. If you were on my side, if you believe that sometimes instinct is more powerful than protocol when lives are at stake, then please like this video. Subscribe for more stories like this, where I share the real, raw experiences that shape us. And most importantly, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. What do you think about my father's actions? What would you have done? I'll see you all in the next story.